Peak 15, a novel by Stephen Shields. It's said this tale began more than 2,500 years ago. While some proclaim that what took place so many centuries ago has little to do with the events that unfolded thousands of lifetimes later, I believe all in life, past, present, and future, are interwoven to create our undeniable destinies. What is the truth or law being undoubtedly not mine to decide? What I do know is the certainty of events I have lived, as I have seen many marvels, both good and evil. I experienced the sun disappear from a midday sky, turning daylight into twilight. I watched an impoverished child rise above all odds to become the great leader of his people. And I was blessed to have witnessed the birth of my 8 children. I've experienced both the finest of what humanity offers its fellow man, and have also borne witness to the unfathomable deeds that man is capable of inflicting upon others. Wiser men than I say, in its natural state, for our world to find balance, it weighs good and evil. With all acts of benevolence, there are equal measures of malevolence. Such is the essence of the tale that my ancestors passed forward, and I will endeavour to retell. Blood Betrayal, Chapter 1. 6th century, 641 BC. The force of the arrow striking his body pushed him backward. The trauma caused an immediate reaction, signalling his brain to flood his bloodstream with adrenaline. In a split second, enzymes pushed throughout his body, blocking his capacity to feel pain. His heart began to race, his muscles tensed, his breathing became shallow and rapidly accelerated. Self-preservation became his single instinctual thought as he was taken over by an overwhelming sense of fight or flight. With his body approaching a state of shock, he realized the gravity of his situation. He'd been struck by 2 arrows and was now completely vulnerable. If he did not find cover immediately to elude his attackers, they would finish him. Scanning the landscape, he spotted the only refuge in sight. His one option was to reach the tall reeds that grew abundantly along the banks of the nearby river. He launched himself into an all-out sprint toward the river, but the arrows lodged deeply in his body turned his strides into erratic, elongated hops. With only a few yards between him and being out of his pursuer's sight, a sharp whistling sound sliced through the air as another arrow passed only inches from his head. Reaching the river, he stumbled and fell onto his side into the thick wall of brush. Now hidden and out of sight, he rolled onto his back and laid silently, attempting to slow his racing mind to assess the situation. His body suddenly writhed in pain as his adrenaline began to wear thin. Glancing down toward his feet, he saw the 2 blood-drenched arrows protruding from his body, one embedded in his thigh, the other in his torso, and the lower half of his body was covered in blood. He realized that there was nothing he could do to slow his bleeding, and he had no true way to understand the extent of the internal damage the arrows caused. The arrow that penetrated his torso had struck one of his lower ribs, splintering the wooden shaft, sending shards of shrapnel slicing through his liver and puncturing his stomach. The other would have likely passed cleanly through his leg, but slowed as its velocity deadened after glancing off his femur and then becoming lodged deeply in the muscular tissue of his thigh. He was an expert archer, having hunted his entire life, and seeing where the arrows had struck him, he quickly understood that his wounds were mortal. He laid his head back onto the flattened bed of grass and began staring at the billowing white clouds as the winds peacefully painted a portrait across its blue canvas. His focus slowly faded into a dormant state of blurred vision, and let his eyes close as he edged toward unconsciousness. Suddenly, the silence was broken by the sound of his brother's voice not far away. Bhaskar, where are you, brother? You are safe now, he cried. I killed our attackers. The traitors are dead. Bhaskar chose to be silent and did not answer his brother, fearing that he might be involved in the plot to ambush and assassinate him. Bhaskar knew that his brother was the kingdom's most prolific hunter. If he was indeed looking to kill him, Chandran was now following his blood trail directly to where he had fallen to finish what he and the palace guards had started. In a louder and more agitated voice, Chandran called again, Bhaskar, where are you? Answer me. Come, brother. We both know that father will soon leave us. How could you, of all people, expect me to stand silently and watch you crowned when we both know I am the stronger? Chandran had revealed himself. I listened to our gods as they came and spoke to me in my sleep. Their visions enlightened me. Fate has chosen me to lead our kingdom to its destiny. You are my brother, and I love you. Find solace in understanding that what must happen was never meant for us to decide. It is our God's will, and there can be no other way. Realizing his twin brother's voice was now just on the perimeter of the reeds, Bhaskar knew he must take action. The Crown Prince's instinct for self-preservation gave him the strength to lift himself off the ground and onto his knees. Like his brother, Bhaskar had been trained to be a warrior and was not going to allow himself to go down without a fight. He heard Chandran laugh tauntingly, as if he was enjoying himself. I feel your presence, brother. Bhaskar saw movement from the tops of the reeds and heard the sound of slow-moving footsteps crushing the dried grass. He wiped the salt-drenched sweat from his burning eyes and crouched into a defensive position, taking an archer's stance and waiting for his brother to come to him. He quietly drew an arrow from his quiver, gripped his bow tightly, and took aim toward the direction of his brother's approaching voice. The reeds parted directly before him to reveal his identical twin brother, Chandran, now face to face only yards apart. Both had bows drawn ready to fire. With a slight grin, Chandran said, "Hello, my brother."